Hello class, so let's go over this first semester review. This is going to be, I'm going to make two videos with this. The first video is going to be for questions 1 through 10, and the second video is going to be for questions 11 through 20. Okay, so I'd like for you to watch both so you can see how each of the questions are completed. Okay. So here's our first one, question number 1. Which lists the correct labels for the diagram shown? So when we look at all these answer choices and you see those over here, all these different kinds of things right here, you see that they're the same numbers that we've been looking at, counting numbers, whole numbers, and so on and so forth. And what we're trying to figure out is what order do they follow. And we know that the very first one is counting numbers. So anything that doesn't start with counting numbers, I can do away with. So this F I can do away with. So then we know that we've got the whole numbers next. Okay, and the whole numbers, they add just a 0. Okay, so that means that we've got counting numbers, whole numbers. So H is good, J is good, G is good so far as the whole number part. Okay, so then we look for the next one. And the next one is going to be our set of integers. Okay, so we got integers here, integers here, integers here. So far, so good. And then we've got rational numbers. Okay, so our rational is going to be next. So here, this one says irrational, so G is out. Okay, this one says rational, this one says rational, so that's good. So then we've got this E right here, which is going to be irrational numbers. Okay, so we look at E, irrational. Oh, and then here's real, so that means J is out, so H is the right answer. And all of these numbers, every one of them is part of the set of real numbers. Okay, so there is question number 1. So question number 2, what we're looking at on this one is which set is dealing with rationals and irrational numbers. So which Venn diagram is correct? So if we look at A right here, we've got 5 and we've got 5 over 12 because we know rational numbers are any number that can be written as a fraction. So that one's good. Now when we look over here at the irrational, square root of 2 is irrational, pi is irrational, but this negative 3.1, well, that's a decimal. So that means it should be over in the rationals. Now this one right here, that little bar that's over it means 1.141414 and so on and so forth. So that's a repeating decimal. And all repeating decimals are rational numbers. Okay, so when we look at these numbers, I'm looking for only square root of 2 and only pi to be in the irrational set. Okay, so we come down here, well, it's got that 1 and 1.14 with a bar. And then right here, we've got the pi in the rational numbers. So that means C is our correct answer. Okay, so that's the second one. Number 3. Okay, this is one that you might want to use your calculator for. It's definitely one kind of like that last one. You would need a calculator for it as well. Okay, so we got 5 numbers are shown on the number line. Okay, the point representing 5/9 is located between which 2 numbers? But when we look at 5/9, I know that if I were to type that into the calculator, I'm going to get 0.5 with a bar, or 0.555555555. Okay, so that means 0.55555 is going to be, if this is 0.5 and this is 0.6 right here, because that's kind of what they're counting by, 0.5 with a bar is going to be right there in the middle of that. Okay, so if we look at that, that means it's going to be between the square root of 9 over 7 and pi over 5, which is B is the correct answer. So in a problem like this, all you really do is type this fraction into the calculator, get a decimal answer, find where that decimal is going to be on the number line, and then choose the 2 that it's in between. Okay, number 4. Okay, on this particular one right here, what we're looking for says which list shows these numbers in order from least to greatest. Okay, so again, this is one of those where you're going to type these into the calculator, but there's a couple things that we need to understand on this particular problem. The first thing are these bars right here. Well, if you remember, those bars are what we call absolute value bars. Absolute value bars ask how far is that number from 0? And that answer is always going to be positive. So the absolute value of negative 5.1 is actually just 5.1. Okay, so if you type in negative 2 times, or to the third power, you're going to end up with negative 8. The square root of 24 times a negative, which is negative 1, okay, that's going to end up giving you negative 4.9, or in that vicinity. It's negative 4.89, blah, 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 something like that. But this negative in front makes the whole thing negative. So that means the square root of just regular 24 is going to be 4.9. And then the negative square root of 60, okay, that's the same kind of thing as this negative 24 here. It's going to be a negative answer, and you end up with negative 7.7. Okay, so now, again, we're looking for least to greatest here. Okay, so which one of these numbers is going to be my smallest, and that is my -8. So I come down here to find anything that starts with the -2 times, or 2 to the third power. So that means I can eliminate A and B. The next one is the square root of 60, okay, or the negative square root of 60. So both of those are good. Okay, then the next one's going to be this negative square root of 24, and so that means that D is good and C is out. Okay, so that would be the answer to question number 4. Okay, question number 5. It is estimated that there are 7, and I can't even say that number, that many numbers of grains of sand on all the beaches of the world. How is this number written in scientific notation? Well, we know for scientific notation, we're going to take our significant digits. Well, in this particular case, that's the 7 and the 5. We're going to write that as 7, 5, and we're going to put the decimal so that its value is between 1 and 10. So that means my decimal's got to go here. Okay, and then I'm going to write times 10 to the, and then we look, where's my decimal at originally? Okay, and that was here at the end. And where did I move my decimal to between the 7 and the 5? How many places are in between? So here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. So that means my exponent is to the 18th, which means it's D. Okay, now one way you can do this particular problem is if you do have a calculator. Okay, if you were to take this number right here and just type it into the calculator, it would give you an answer, and when you hit enter, it would give you 7.5 E18. This is the way the calculator writes scientific notation. The E is the times 10 to the E stands for the exponent. Okay, so that's all you have to really do. Right? Now on number 6, it says the wavelength of an X-ray measures 1.0 times 10 to the -11 meters. How is this number written using standard notation? Okay, so this one, you could do the same exact thing. Okay, you could type each one of these into the calculator and see which one gives you this as an answer. Okay, and you find out that it's H, I believe. Okay, so basically what we're looking for in a negative exponent, we know it's going to move, it's going to be a small number. Okay, so we're looking at this one. We know that in order to move it around the decimal right here, I'm moving it to the left. So I got one place is moving it around the 1, and then the rest of the places are zeros. So that means if I move my decimal around the 1 time, that means I'm only going to have 10 zeros because my exponent is 11. Okay, so I look here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So that tells me that H is my answer. Okay, question number 7. What is the mean absolute deviation of 5, 11, 2, 7, and 16 rounded to the nearest 10th? Okay, well, in this one right here, what we're looking for is the mean absolute deviation, which means that there's a 3-step process. Step number 1 is find the mean. Okay, so that means we add all these numbers up, and we divide by, in this case, we divide by 5. You end up with 41 as your answer, and so we divide that by 5, and you end up with 8.2 as your mean. Now, I've taught you that the first thing you do, okay, in mean absolute deviation, when you find the mean, it's going to be one of your answer choices, eliminate it. Okay, so that's going to be an elimination. We're going to eliminate 8.2. Because now what I need to do is I need to take each one of these numbers in my set and subtract it from 8.2 and take the positive value of that. So if I do that, if I do 5 minus 8.2 or 8.2 minus 5, I end up with 3.2. And then if I do the same thing to the 11, I end up with 2.8, and then 6.2, and then 1.2, and then 7.8 for those values. Okay, so then what we do is we add those together. And when you do that, you end up with 21.2. Okay, and then what we do is we divide that number by 5 as well. And when you do that, you end up with 4.24. And this says round to the nearest 10th. So that means my answer is D. Okay. Now, number 8 says, what value of X makes this statement true? It says subtract 1 from the product of 5 and X gives the same value as adding 10 to the product of 3 and X. It says record your answer in the answer document. Okay, so in this one, what we're doing is we've got to, 1, translate this problem into an equation and then solve it. So where it says I'm going to subtract 1 from the product of 5 and X, so that tells me it's going to be 5X, not plus, excuse me, 5X minus 1. And we know that it's going to be the same value as adding 10 to the product of 3 and x. So that's going to be 3x plus 10. Now we know to solve an equation, we've got 3 steps. Get the letters on one side, get the numbers on the other, and then solve. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my subtraction to addition next to its opposite. And then I'm going to move this 3x over to be with the 5x. Okay, and we do that by adding its opposite. And then I do the same thing to the other side. 5x plus -1 plus -3x. And then we combine like terms. So this 5x and the -3x go together to make a 2x plus -1 is equal to, over here my 3x's go away and I'm left with 10. Now I need to move the -1 over to be with the 10. So 2x plus -1 plus 1 equals 10 plus 1. So 2x is equal to 11. And now to solve, we divide both sides by 2, and you end up with x is equal to 5.5, which is the answer. Okay? And then we've got question number 9. Roger and Novak have a hot dog eating contest. After the first 2 minutes, Roger has consumed 8 hot dogs, and Novak has consumed only 7 hot dogs. Okay, so it's important to know that Roger had 8 and Novak had 7. Okay, so from that point, Roger eats 3 hot dogs each minute. Okay, so that's important. While Novak eats 4 hot dogs per minute. After how many minutes M will Novak have eaten more hot dogs than Roger? Okay, so the first thing that we've got to do is write expressions that represent Roger and Novak. Okay, so let's talk about Roger. Well, we know Roger had 8 hot dogs originally. And then what did he do? After that 2 minutes, he eats 3 hot dogs per minute. So plus 3 hot dogs per minute. Okay, and we want to know, now we need to do Novak. Okay, now Novak had 7 hot dogs, and he was going to consume 4 hot dogs per minute. So this is Roger, and this is Novak. And now it says, after how many minutes will Novak have eaten more hot dogs than Roger? So I need Novak to be more than Roger, so I put a less than symbol there. So we look over here. Okay, if we look at H and J, they've got the M's on the wrong numbers. So that's why H and J are out. So we're only looking at F and G. Okay, now which one actually has that? G. Okay, and then question number 10. What is the solution to this equation? Well, this one's just like that one on number 8, and we just have to solve it. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to change my subtraction to addition next to its opposite. Now I want to move my x over to be with the 2x. So x plus -x plus -4, 2x plus 3 plus -x. So the 2x and the -x go together to make x plus 3 equals, my x's go away, and I'm left with -4. So then I need to move the 3 over to be with a -4. So x plus 3 plus -3 equals -4 plus -3. So x is equal to -7, which is the solution to this equation. Okay, so that is the first 10 questions. So you'll come back for the second video to watch the last 10 questions.